I'm Caroline, originally a scientist. I've worked in biotech and pharma for over 30 years, and I think it would be fair to say that I have got a bit of an obsession about optimization and breakthrough thinking. So that's what I'm here to tell you about today. But first, I'm going to give you a very quick introduction to MyAmici so that we can set the scene, and then we're going to talk about the actual topic. So Amici was founded in 2005 to serve the sector. And today we are the lab ops backbone of many of our customers. So what we do specifically is we do lab procurement, equipment and asset management, and we also have GMP and R&D inventory systems, all supported by an intelligent data layer to form the lab operations backbone. In the 21 years, I realized afterwards I've made a small mistake in this presentation, which is a bit embarrassing. In the 21 years, we've actually saved £645 million across all of our customers. And we've done hundreds of integrations with customer systems and supplier systems in order to bring them real-time solutions and information at their fingertips, including things like PubMed, and all of the suppliers' systems. I think continuous improvement is at the heart of everything that we do in operations. It's certainly in my heart. It's not something that you start and you finish. It's something that you do every day. But first of all, I'm going to talk to you about something that hit me quite hard when I went to a dinner a few years ago. It was a really interesting speaker, somebody that had been in the cabinet office of the government, and he opened by saying, this was the slowest day for the rest of your life. And 2 years ago, that was quite surprising for me. And I actually sat there and I thought about it. I went home and I thought about it on the drive home. I talked about it with friends. I tried to work out, what did that really mean? This is the slowest day for the rest of your life, because every day from here onwards is going to get faster and faster. And I probably thought that was going to be about robotics, automation, and maybe we were all playing with ChatGPT at that point, and I don't think any of us probably had any idea. But today, what we're doing with AI is super more advanced than that. And probably what we're going to be doing next week is going to be a different level again and open our eyes even further. And I've seen it firsthand, but let's actually talk about innovations to start with. I'm a bit of a fan of space. I've actually been to NASA Cape Canaveral twice. It's super awesome. If anyone hasn't been, I really recommend it. And what really struck me was the ambition to get to Mars. It was all over NASA. There were exhibitions everywhere. Everybody was talking about getting to Mars. But what I liked more than Mars, because I really wasn't that fascinated with Mars, I love a bit of history, and I loved the exhibition about the moon landings. And I don't know if anyone knows much about the moon landings, but we undertook moon landings between 69 and 72. And actually, it was really cool to land on the moon, but riskier to get off the moon. And I didn't know this until I went to NASA. In order to actually exit the atmosphere, you probably know this now because they've just tried to do it again, you have to do what they call a slingshot, and you circumnavigate the atmosphere at a certain speed. And in order to break the gravitational pull of the Earth or the moon, you go at a certain speed and then you go at a certain trajectory and angle. And what I asked the guide was, how did they actually calculate the gravitation of the moon? Because nobody had been there. It was a bit of a puzzle to me. And what he told me is they didn't need to, because somebody calculated that in the 1600s. You might have heard of him, Sir Isaac Newton, right? And apparently he used a telescope and various really cool mathematicians, right? So I was just awestruck. But I guess the point of telling that story is the fact that we have a lot of old knowledge, and we mustn't forget the old knowledge while we adopt the new technologies, because thinking about the power of what we know already is super important. So what you might know is for 30 years, NASA has been talking about getting to Mars. Elon Musk has been talking about getting to Mars. But suddenly, we've gone backwards a bit, and we've just done a circumnavigation of the moon. And now it's all about actually testing what we already could do a few years ago and proving that we could do that before we go for the big shot. And I think that's exactly where labs are now. That's enough about space. Let's move on to labs, right? That's enough about that. So I think I want you to think about Mars is the big prize. But before we go to Mars, let's think about getting the foundations and the basics right. Let's land on the moon before we focus on getting to Mars. If you skip the moon, it doesn't mean that you'll get to Mars faster. You could end up at the wrong trajectory entirely. So let's talk about people in this room and what they might be experiencing right now if the foundations aren't set properly. The CFO in this room might be wondering where their lab budget is going. The CTO in this room might be wondering how on earth he's going to get the 6 lab-based platforms to properly and effectively talk to each other. If you're running operations, you might be wondering how you can get much better efficiency into the operation, how to prevent the delays that are happening. And if you work in the lab, the chances are you've spent some of the last week chasing a supplier and solving quite a lot of problems. And I guess the whole purpose of this talk is to talk about the hidden cost. It's beneath the surface of your lab, and it's work that nobody designed to do. Nobody owns that work. Nobody measures it, and nobody really wants to do it. But until you actually see that work, no amount of technology will fix it. And there's a few problems that we need to face. In actual fact, I know how busy a lot of our customers are. We're all busy, and often it can be that we're too busy to try and fix the problem. There's some psychological things which I find interesting as well. See all of that busy work. I've not clicked on here, I apologise. All of that busy work, people actually feel guilty that they're doing that busy work. People might feel nervous that they haven't delegated it to someone capable of doing it, or feel guilty that they haven't actually fixed the problem that everybody knows is there. When we're talking about that amount of work, we call it invisible drag. So I've gone too much. It's the work that appears in every single organization, no matter what sort of industry you're in. Nobody ever designed it, and it can accumulate very quickly and very quietly. And people get around it because they find workarounds. They might be sending emails out. They might be using Excel spreadsheets. But these are temporary solutions which might now be used as load-bearing infrastructure. Let me give you a real example. A scientist needs to buy a piece of equipment. They've never bought one before. So what happens? They spend days, possibly even weeks, researching the options, reaching out to suppliers, potentially running demos, negotiating, making decisions, and doing work that probably they were never trained to undertake. And then the equipment arrives, and something that's been overlooked. It could be the door opens the wrong way. It could be that they can't get the equipment into the building, and this genuinely happens all the time. It could be that the supplier promised to deliver and fails to deliver, and so it maybe has an impact on starting milestones and causes a whole tranche of issues. Small things that are causing invisible drag. And what happens then? Suddenly everybody is in crisis mode trying to fix a problem that you didn't anticipate. Facilities get involved, finance might get involved, senior management might get involved. But the problem then is scientists aren't doing science. That's the invisible drag, and it's everywhere. And here's another thing that I learned by going to a dinner, and quite an uncomfortable fact. Harvard Business Review did a study a few years ago, and they found that 41% of a skilled worker's time is spent doing things way, way below their skill set. It's horrifying. Who in the crowd can sort of sort of feel that number and feel that that's definitely a fact? Put your hands up. Yeah. I think, and back to who's actually willing to admit it. Bit of a problem. You know, you might be better at maths than me, so we can all say that's 2 days a week that we're doing things that we probably shouldn't be doing. And that's what we've built at MyAmici, to eliminate some of this work. But how do we resolve this, both as operations people and with tools that you've got? There's easy answers, and we mustn't forget about the old solutions, because we have the knowledge. It's been tried and tested over many, many decades. You might have heard of lean operations. Manufacturing organizations across the globe have used this for decades. I am a big fan of manufacturing of lean thinking. And once it's in your blood, it's in your blood in everywhere you look. Sometimes in the Japanese word, they call wastes mudda. And one of the biggest wastes, the waste that everybody doesn't talk about, is using inappropriate talent to do low value jobs, using the wrong talent, because it takes your focus completely off the end goal. Accountants also sometimes start looking at waste within an organization. They've used the term sludge, equally derogatory, and I think nobody wants to be doing sludge work. But we can re-engineer everything in the lab, just like manufacturing have done for decades. So looking through the lean lens, it's thinking about things that you've ended up ordering because you didn't have the visibility of what you already had in stock. It's thinking about expired products sitting in a cold room, taking up precious space on the shelf. And you're going to have to pay to dispose of them. Nobody needed it. Now it's taking up space, and you're going to have to pay to dispose of it. For anyone who's here in finance, a lot of our customers in finance tell us that they have dedicated individuals who might spend perhaps even a week, a month, recoding miscoded purchase orders to make sure, because it's absolutely critical to make sure you cost on the right project. It's critical for R&D tax credits. And I think it's really important to recognize, as labs look to scale, as they look to design AI and benefit from the efficiencies that they bring, there's a huge risk if we don't sort out the human back-end process. And that invisible drag will come with you, and it'll slow us down. So let's go back to space for a second. If you think about the ultimate goal and AI enabling everything that we want to do, let's think about the moon. The moon is your process. The moon is the data. The moon is eliminating all of that invisible drag. Let's land on the moon first. But let's talk about why people don't do this. In 30 years working across various organizations, it's not rocket science to think about planning small steps and being really clear about what you're trying to achieve. But fundamentally, back to psychology again, lots of people don't do it. It's actually in our DNA to get super excited about solutions that we think we ought to have. And we look at the symptom and we jump straight to the solution. It's actually harder to identify the root cause. But if we don't do that, that's what keeps the invisible drag still in place. Over 30 years, I've built a methodology for looking at this invisible drag and making sure that we have the right understanding before we move forward to the solutions. And let me tell you about that. It's the distillation of everything I've ever learned, which is my only joke in this, because I'm not that funny. But let me talk you through the methodology. It's very simple, right? There's lots of methodologies out there. Most of them are far too complicated, and you can tie yourself in knots and not see the wood for the trees, achieving the results that you ultimately want. But it's always best, as scientists, we're taught to start every piece of work that we do with an aim or an objective. That was drilled into me from my first day at university. Start with the end in mind, as Stephen Covey says. So when we're approaching business problems or process, why would we do anything different? Let's think like scientists. Let's behave like scientists. Let's really be clear about the purpose and the scope of what we're trying to achieve. And then next, the most important step, and the one that you should invest the most time in, is before we actually rush to the solution, make sure that we really understand what we're talking about, right? You don't have to, we're not asking you to perform and be the practitioner here, but we do need you to understand things like, who are the stakeholders? What's the current process? What are the known problems? What are the controls that we need? I often think about understanding like the layers of an onion. If you only take the outer layer off, then your understanding is only skin deep. If you want to truly revolutionize a process and truly take advantage of new technology, you need to get to the very core in your understanding. And then, limited joke, distill. Because when you have a really detailed understanding, you can probably feel very overwhelmed by the information. So you need to work out what information you need. And also work with the team. The next stage is reimagine. So this is the fun bit that everybody gets to before they've done the first two stages. What options could you have? And, you need to look at things backwards, sideways, upside down. And then you can do the engineering and the testing part, making sure that you really have achieved the purpose that you set out to achieve. So we all know that AI isn't a magic wand, but it can be incredibly powerful. AI needs context, it needs structure, and it needs clean data. And that's the challenge. So the labs that ultimately win the AI race won't necessarily be the ones that spend the most. They'll be the ones that build from the best foundations. And just to hammer home my point, I'm saying, old wisdom is the best wisdom. First of all, think human intelligence. Then we need to think about connecting all the tools that we've got and the security of all of those so that the data is easily accessed into an AI model. Then we need to think about cleansed, enhanced, and normalized data that can work within an AI. And it's then that AI becomes really powerful and a multiplier for everything you want to do. So what does a pure lab look like? What does it look like when you get this right? Neil, our CTO, is here today and is available at the stand if anyone wants to talk to him. He's been working with MCP and AI so that he can put a chat on top of our platform. And in the future, we believe that scientists will use the chats to plan all of their experiments, design their experiments. They'll be able to know within seconds what materials that they need, which items they already have on stock, which items they need to order, who are the best suppliers, what the hazard complications are with any of the raw materials, and to provide that information. There'll be no duplication, no guesswork, and most importantly, no invisible drag. This is what happens when you have the right lab operations backbone. Here's another example. Using the same platform and same pieces of information, quickly identify overspend and opportunities for saving, connecting potentially the purchasing platform with an ELN and also your ERP. This can take seconds with AI, and actually you probably mean to do it regularly, but maybe nobody ever really gets round to doing it because it all takes time. So AI could enable this. And then we can also use the platform to just do standard things, but maybe with more unusual products that we want to source. And we can move faster without the friction. So I just want to sum up by saying, in the next decade, we won't be defined by who has the best ideas, but who removes friction the fastest. Because the most expensive thing in your lab isn't the equipment, it's your scientists. If this resonates with you, my team and I are going to be on stand 50. We'd love to talk to you. We've got an ebook on the methodology, which we're happy to send out. It's the full unabridged version. We've got an ROI calculator on the stand, and Neil is here to talk about AI and integrations and MCP. So thank you very much. If anyone's got any quick questions, I'd welcome them.